The ruins of an ancient city stretch before her. Broken buildings, buried in snow like the bones of a dead colossus. Yuna walks slowly. Her footsteps make a low, muffled sound against the ice. She is never in a hurry. From time to time, she stops and looks at the horizon, just to make sure she is still alive. The silence haunts me more than death. When I walk, the wind answers me. When I stop, it falls silent, she thought. She enters one of the buildings, exploring. She rummages through frozen drawers, through remnants of technology she does not understand. She finds an old book, its pages fragile to the touch. She opens it. The image of a green planet, with enormous trees and flowers of vibrant colors, fills the page. Her eyes fix on it. Yuna's thought, I will find this place, no matter how long it takes. She tucks the book away, and then she hears a sound. Footsteps. Someone has followed her. Yuna steps out of the building slowly, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. The sound of footsteps echoes in the snow. A shadow emerges from the freezing mist. A dark-skinned alien with emerald eyes. His body is covered in a metallic exoskeleton, and he holds a rusted rifle aimed directly at Yuna. I don't know what you are, but I know you're worth a lot of money. Yuna does not respond. She just stands there, unmoving. The alien moves to the side, trying to get a better angle. Let's make this easy. You come with me. No fight. No pain. Yuna tilts her head slightly, as if analyzing the situation, and then she disappears. The alien's eyes widen. Yuna moves like a ghost. Before he can react, she is already beside him. The sound of metal cutting through the air is the only thing he hears before feeling the ice beneath his body. His rifle falls to the ground, sliced in half. The alien spins backward, drawing a curved blade from his hip. He lunges, aiming for a quick strike, but Yuna is no longer there. She appears behind him. Her sword swings down like a scythe. He only has time to raise his blade in defense, but the impact sends him flying backward, sliding across the snow. Blue. Blood drips onto the ground. The alien struggles to get up, panting. His mask has cracked from the blow, and then he sees Yuna stands there, her face exposed. Her mask was torn during the fight, and for the first time he sees what she really is. Human. His eyes widen. What are you? Yuna does not respond. She simply pulls a piece of cloth over her face again. She walks toward him slowly, her sword lowered but ready. Her footsteps make no sound. The alien feels the cold against his neck. The edge of her blade is touching his skin. He has no escape. But then he speaks. I've seen something like you, but not exactly like you. Yuna stops. Her gaze sharpens. He's hunting around here. She tightens her grip on the sword. The alien groans in pain as the blade presses harder against his skin. If you let me live, I'll tell you. The camera focuses on Yuna's eyes. Silence stretches. For a moment, it seems like she will kill him anyway. And then she sheathes her sword. The alien exhales deeply. He has survived. He begins to speak. The snow falls endlessly. The wind sings its never-ending melody. Yuna walks through the tundra, her black coat heavy with ice, her fingers stiff from the cold. The ruins of Typhon appear on the horizon. Broken towers, half-buried walls, the shadow of a forgotten empire. She moves through the wreckage. Each step sinks into the snow, and then she sees it. Amidst it all, a small patch of living grass, like a forbidden sanctuary, and at the center a single blue flower. Yuna stops. Her heart beats differently. She has never seen anything like this. She kneels. The wind stops. For a moment, it's as if the entire world is waiting for her reaction. Yuna reaches out with the lightest touch, feeling the fragile texture of the petals. She remembers the book. She remembers what she always wanted. She remembers what she never had. But then, a melody begins to play. A sound drifts through the air, soft, strange. Yuna slowly rises. At the top of a broken ruin, a man in a dark cloak plays a silver flute. The melody echoes like a whisper lost in time. The man hasn't seen her. Not yet. Yuna places a hand on the hilt of her sword. Then he stops playing and looks directly at her. His eyes are human, and then he stands, draws a massive sword from his side, and enters a battle stance. No words are spoken. Yuna moves like lightning, her katana gleaming in the mist. He defends with absolute precision. The swords sing, steel against steel. The duel is intense, yet silent. No shouts, no taunts. Just two warriors testing each other. He strikes hard. Yuna dodges with grace. She attacks swiftly. He defends like a wall. They study each other, both trying to understand if the other is real. And then, in the middle of the fight, something awakens. The ground trembles. A shadow rises beneath the ice. Red lights flicker on. A mechanical eye glows. The ice shatters, and something massive emerges. A mecha, buried for centuries, its armor covered in forgotten symbols. It locks onto Yuna. Target detected. The metallic voice echoes through the dead city. The two fighters stop, and then together they charge at the enemy. Scene 6. A bond, forged in chaos. The mecha attacks without mercy. They move like predators. Striking in sync, Rei climbs a ruined wall and leaps onto the monster, driving his blade into its joints. Yuna vanishes into the mist and reappears behind it, slicing through its metallic legs. The machine tries to counterattack, but they are too fast. And then Yuna sees the opening. With a fluid motion, she leaps high and severs the machine's head. Silence returns. Only the hot steam rising from the dead metal fills the air. Rei looks at Yuna, and for the first time, he smiles. The wreckage of the defeated maker still released hot steam into the freezing air. The silence after the battle was almost deafening. Yuna wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and sheathed her katana. Her gaze remained sharp. Rei, on the other hand, stretched and laughed loudly, as if he hadn't just fought a centuries-old metal monster. Ha! I thought I was gonna die. It's been a long time since I had a fight like that. Yuna didn't respond. She simply observed him, analyzing every detail of his face. His blade was still in hand, but pointed downward, no longer a threat. The warm vapor of battle still rose around them. He stared back at her, his dark eyes glowing with an unreadable mystery. For a moment, neither knew what to say. Rei broke the silence first. "I've never seen a human." Yuna blinked slowly. "I've never seen a human either." The wind blew between them. A small smirk appeared at the corner of Rei's mouth. "Well, then today is a special day." He sheathed his sword and kicked a piece of the fallen maker. The metal rang hollow. "This thing is worth a fortune." Yuna looked at the wreckage. There were massive gears, ancient circuits, partially destroyed energy cores. Rei crouched down, examining the parts. Some of this is junk, but other pieces. He picked up a gleaming green metal plate. "This, pure rare alloy. If we find the right buyer, we can eat until we can't anymore." Yuna crossed her arms, watching him. He looked up and smiled, amused. "How about we head to Bohemia Tundra?" Yuna frowned. "What's that?" Rei stretched his arms and fell back into the snow, as if lying somewhere comfortable. He let out a short laugh. "You're from here and don't know anything. I'm starting to think you're a ghost." She remained silent. He stood up, dusting the ice off his coat. Bohemia Tundra is a black market, one of the biggest on this continent. Mercenaries, hunters, thieves, dealers of forbidden technology. Everything and everyone gathered in one place, Yuna pondered. She had heard rumors of places like that, but never approached one. She always avoided crowded places. She didn't like being noticed. Rei noticed her hesitation and stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Let's sell the best parts of this mecha, whatever we can carry." And today he pounded his chest confidently. "We feast." And then he let out a loud laugh, echoing through the ice. Yuna stood still for a moment, watching him laugh as if life weren't a minefield waiting to explode, but without realizing it. A small smile appeared on her face. She looked at the fallen maker once more. Maybe it was a good idea. The icy wind of the tundra howled like a grim warning as Yuna and Rei descended the slippery stone steps leading to the Bohemia Tundra black market. The place was a massive crater, shielded from the extreme cold by a cracked glass dome and rusted metal walls, likely a structure left behind by some long-extinct civilization. Inside, a thriving underground city pulsed with illicit trade, flickering lights, and the unmistakable scent of oil, gunpowder, and alien sweat. Bohemia Tundra was a melting pot market, a meeting point for all the races of the galaxy that had no place in their own worlds. White-scaled reptilian aliens with slit-pupil eyes sold plasma weapons alongside small insectoid beings with multiple limbs that tinkered with circuits as if weaving webs of technology. A four-armed giant with blue skin and glowing tribal tattoos carried a container filled with frozen bodies, merchandise for some sinister buyer. The alleys were populated by shadows, and the vendors shouted their offers while lurking creatures waited for a distracted prey. Yuna hated places like this. If it were up to her, she would have let Ray come alone. But he seemed confident, and deep down she didn't want to leave him alone. They approached one of the largest stalls, a dirty metal counter illuminated by flickering lamps. The owner, Juko, a burly alien with cracked grey skin, small eyes, and a broad snout, like a fusion of a bear and a deformed boar. He wore a tunic made of leather from creatures Yuna didn't recognize, and a necklace of massive teeth hung over his chest. His scent was strong, a mix of rust and raw meat. Juko held one of the pieces from the defeated mecha, analyzing it with his thick, grease-stained fingers. Fake. Ray, who had already been counting the money in his head, frowned. What? Jugo shook his head, tossing the piece back onto the counter. This isn't Black Lagoon tech. They stopped making this model centuries ago. The junk you brought. Me is just old scrap. Useless. Ray picked up the piece again, examining it. Of course it is. We just defeated this maker. We saw it activate and attack us with our own eyes. Zhoko let out a rough laugh. You defeating a Black Lagoon mecha? He glanced at the mercenaries around him, and his laughter turned into a collective chuckle. Listen up, folks. The kid here thinks he took down a mecha by himself. Ray huffed, crossing his arms. We took it down together. Jogo wiped an imaginary tear from the corner of his eye before turning serious again. Look, kid, I'll give you 1 rukia for this scrap. Ray's face twisted in disbelief. 1 rukia? Just this piece in your hand is worth at least 100 rukias. Jugo smirked. Take it or get kicked out of here. Yuna remained still, simply observing the exchange. She knew the type. People like Jugo didn't negotiate. They imposed. Ray gritted his teeth, but tried to contain his frustration. Come on, man. 200 rukias for the pieces we managed to carry. You can resell them for 500 easily. Let's be reasonable. Jugo laughed again, but this time, it wasn't a friendly laugh. He made a subtle hand gesture, and 3 mercenaries emerged from the shadows behind him. One was tall and slender, with glossy black skin and completely white eyes, wearing a long coat adorned with chains. Another had 4 arms and golden skin, his armor covered in emblems of battles won. The third was short and muscular, resembling a fusion between a monkey and a crustacean, with sharp claws and protruding fangs. Jugo grinned, revealing rotten teeth. You don't get it, I'm not negotiating. He snapped his fingers. The mercenaries advanced. Yuna sighed. Ray stepped back, raising his hands. Okay, no trouble. We don't want to fight. The mercenaries growled, laughing like predators. One of them grabbed Ray by the shoulder, forcing him to kneel. Another moved toward Yuna, trying to seize her arm. That was a mistake. Her body moved before her mind even processed it. Her elbow shot up at an impossible angle, smashing into the creature's face, sinking its jaw inward. Before the second mercenary could react, Yuna had already spun in the air, using the enemy's own weight against him, throwing him against the wall. Ray knocked down the third mercenary with a punch to the nose, but another came at him. Yuna dashed to his side, sliding across the ground and kicking the opponent's legs, breaking his balance. The mercenaries began to hesitate. Jugo frowned. One of his men spat blood on the ground and shouted, "What the hell is this? She fights like a... what AI?" The black market fell silent. The few customers and other traders stopped what they were doing to watch. Yuna clenched her fists. The silence lasted a second, and then chaos erupted. The mercenaries charged with everything they had. The Bohemia Tundra turned into a battlefield. The metallic sound of clashing blades cuts through the air. The black market, once a whirlwind of illegal trade and mixed voices, is now a chaos of fleeing bodies, merchants toppling their stalls, and screams echoing through the claustrophobic space. Yuna moves through it all like a shadow. Every strike is precise, cold, instinctive. Her hands grip the sheath of her sword firmly, eyes sharp to the slightest movement around her. Ray fights beside her, his feet sliding across the frozen ground, dodging and counter-attacking with fluidity. Unlike Yuna, he fights as if he's dancing. His strikes have an almost methodical, calculated rhythm. They win quickly. The mercenaries fall one by one, either incapacitated or dead, and silence creeps through the market like a satisfied predator. Jugo, the alien merchant who tried to cheat them, watches with wide eyes. His gang lies scattered around him, and he knows he's next. He raises his hands. "It was a mistake, yes? We can talk?" Ray kicks a metal crate beside him, sending it crashing to the ground with a loud bang. "We already talked." Jugo swallows hard. Yuna stares at him, her blade still in hand. The alien can feel it. She wouldn't hesitate to cut him down right then and there. He takes a deep breath and mutters, "You know this fight didn't go unnoticed, right?" Yuna. And Ray exchange glances. "They'll come for you." "Who?" Yuna asks. Jugo hesitates. The Black Lagoon is always watching. The air shifts. Yuna feels a different kind of chill in her stomach. An old fear. But before she can ask more, the distant sound of sirens shatters the silence. They're coming. They need to get out. They find refuge in an old underground warehouse, lost in the darkest corners of Bohemia tundra. The place reeks of rust and old oil. Small generators cast a faint glow, barely illuminating the space. Yuna sits on the floor, leaning against a cold, metal wall. Her body aches. Ray rummages through some crates and finds an old canteen. He opens it, sniffs, then takes a sip. Yuna watches him in silence. He tosses the canteen to her. "Drink, still good." She catches it and takes a sip. It's bitter but warm. For a while neither of them speaks. Only the sound of the wind outside fills the silence. "Did you know I lived in a cage?" Yuna's voice breaks the silence, low, almost distant. Ray looks at her but doesn't respond. It was a strange place. Cold. Full of eyes watching me like I was some kind of freak. Her fingers lightly brush the sheath of her sword. "I was a child, but to them I was just a trophy." She lets out a short, humorless laugh. "They always asked why I ran away, as if it was hard to understand." Ray remains silent. She looks at him. For the first time, her eyes are vulnerable. "Aren't you going to ask?" He gives a small smile. "I don't need to. You ran because you wanted to live." Yuna lowers her gaze. "Yes." "And you?" she asks. "What do you want?" Ray looks up at the ceiling for a moment. "I want to survive." Yuna studies his answer. Something inside her stirs. "Do you think that's enough?" "I don't know, but for now it works." She takes a deep breath. "I want to leave this planet." Ray turns to her. "Seriously?" She nods, her eyes drifting to the metal ceiling. "I read about different places, planets that are still alive with forests with flowers." For a moment silence settles between them. "Do you think they exist?" Ray watches Yuna. She seems so strong, so lethal, but in that moment she also seems human. He doesn't answer right away. "If they do," he finally says, "maybe we should go find them." Yuna's heart beats differently. She has never had anyone who wanted to stay by her side. Never had an ally. Maybe this time is different. But what she doesn't realize is that Ray already knows the answer. He already knows her dream will never come true because he was sent to make sure of it. Ray watches Yuna. She has let her guard down for the first time since they met. The way she speaks, the way her eyes shine when she talks about the planet of flowers, this should be irrelevant. He shouldn't care. But for a moment, for a microscopic instant, he feels something, a weight in his chest that he doesn't understand. Something wrong. A code error? A system malfunction? Or something worse? Something replicants aren't supposed to feel. Yuna stands up, grabbing her sword. "If we're leaving this planet, we need a ship." Ray blinks, snapping back to reality. He smirks, shoving his hands into his pockets. Then I guess we're stealing one. Yuna smirks back. Sounds like a plan. They step out of the hideout, walking side by side. The snow awaits them. The future calls them. And Ray knows that soon he will have to complete his mission. And when that moment comes, he doesn't know if he'll be able to. The sun shone in golden hues. The trees stretched toward the sky, their leaves so vibrantly green they seemed unreal. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of flowers she had never smelled before. Yuna walked barefoot through the soft grass, feeling the warm earth beneath her feet. The sky was blue, clear, with no dead moons or clouds of ice. Colorful birds flew above, singing songs she didn't recognize. And then she saw him. Ray was there, standing under the shade of a great tree, a faint smile on his lips. His sword rested beside him, untouched. "So this is what you wanted?" he asked. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment, letting the breeze touch her face. "Yes," she turned to him. "And you? What do you want?" He didn't answer. He only watched her, as if he didn't know the answer himself. And then the blade tore through the dream. The blue sky ripped apart. The green leaves turned to ash. The birds fell from the sky like lifeless stones. The ground opened, and the ice returned. Metal gleamed in the darkness. Yuna took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. Ray stood before her, sword in hand, his eyes empty. "I'm sorry." The words fell like a death sentence. Yuna felt something inside her break. The warmth of the nearby fire couldn't drive away the cold spreading through her chest. "What did you say?" Ray didn't answer right away. He simply raised his blade. "I am a hunter." His gaze did not waver. His body did not hesitate. "I was created to exterminate the universe's last plague." Yuna's blood ran cold. "You lied." Her tone carried no fury, no pain, only emptiness. But her eyes burned. Ray tightened his grip around the sword. "Yes." Yuna lowered her head, her fingers tightening around the hilt of her katana. She should have known. She always knew. Never trust. That was her only vow, and she had broken her own rule, and now she would pay for it. The wind howled between them. The ice whispered, and then the swords clashed. Blades slashed through the air in a whirlwind of sparks and ice. Ray struck first, his attack falling like a hammer. Powerful, precise, relentless. Yuna dodged at the last second, feeling the wind of his strike pass close to her face. She stepped back, her eyes studying his every movement. He was fast, incredibly fast, but she was faster. Ray lunged again, and their swords met with raw force. Yuna felt the impact vibrate through her arm, but she did not yield. They exchanged blows like thunder. Crashing in the sky, Ray fought like a predator. His style was brutal, designed to crush his enemy without mercy. But Yuna was different. Her body moved at angles Ray didn't understand. She flowed like water, slipped through the air like a whisper on the wind. Every defense wasn't just a defense. It was a path. Every strike seemed to come from an impossible void. That isn't a normal style. Ray realized in the middle of the fight. What the hell is she? The thought invaded his mind like an error in his code, but he couldn't hesitate. He shouldn't hesitate, and yet something was wrong inside him. Ray shouldn't have lost his balance, but he did. He shouldn't have left an opening, but he did, and Yuna saw it. She spun, sliding across the ice, and her katana flashed like lightning in the storm. Ray tried to block, but she was faster. The blade cut into his shoulder, and he staggered back, feeling the impact shudder through his internal circuits. I was made to kill humans. I am a predator. Then why am I losing? He tried to attack again, but Yuna had already vanished. She ducked low, spinning her katana with lethal precision. The strike rose, and her blade stopped a hair's breadth from Ray's neck. The world stopped with it. The ice around them whispered. The sound of the wind was the only thing left. Yuna did not hesitate. She never hesitated. Her gaze was fierce, untamed. And Ray, for the first time, felt fear. Not of her, not of death, but of himself. Of what was inside him, that doubt, that error, that feeling that shouldn't exist. He fell to his knees, the sword slipped from his fingers, and Yuna stood there looking down at him, her chest rising and falling, her breath warm in the cold night. The look of someone who had trusted and been betrayed. She could kill him, but she didn't. Ray closed his eyes, and for the first time, he didn't know what to do. The wind roared through the ruins, lifting snow and metallic dust. Yuna stood still, her katana still raised. The edge of the blade dripped with a dark liquid, not blood, but something that moved in the wrong way, almost like living mercury. Ray was kneeling, his head bowed. His body was damaged. His systems were failing, but he was not dead. He could not die, and Yuna knew that. She took a step forward, her gaze impassive. He had lied. He had deceived. He had tried to kill her. Her fingers tightened around the hilt of her sword. The blade gleamed under the sunless purple sky. Ray lifted his gaze. He did not beg. He did not ask for forgiveness. He only looked at her, the same expression as before, the one Yuna didn't understand, the one that unsettled her. She closed her eyes for a second, her breathing steady, and then, without a word, she turned the blade and struck. The sword cut deep, not to kill but to condemn. Ray felt the impact tear through his synthetic armor, destroy his mechanical joints, shut down parts of his circuits. He fell backward. His arms did not respond, neither did his legs. His body was now a tomb of steel, buried there among the wreckage of an ancient ship to be forgotten by time. The wind blew, slowly covering his form with snow. His eyes could still see. His mind could still think. But he could not move. A maker, entombed in ice. Shadow waiting for centuries, perhaps. This was the fate of the assassins of the Black Lagoon. Yuna sheathed her katana. She said nothing. She did not look back. And then she simply left. The cold would take care of the rest. Yuna walked and walked. The wind blew and blew. Her body ached, but she ignored it. Her mind was heavy, but she did not allow it to touch her. She pulled her coat tighter around her, staring at the endless horizon. The truth was clear. No one was trustworthy. It didn't matter how many pretty words were spoken. It didn't matter how many smiles were given. In the end, everything was a lie. In the end, everyone betrayed. The cold was the only thing true in this world. She clutched the book hidden inside her coat, the book that spoke of a planet of flowers. That dream seemed more distant than ever, but she still walked, because to stop was to give up. There was once a time when Yuna did not know what loneliness was. When she was still a child inside the glass cage, there were always eyes watching her. It wasn't love. It wasn't care. But at least something had been there. Now, there was nothing. Nothing, only the wind. Perhaps humans truly were a plague. Perhaps the Black Lagoon was right. But if they were right, why did she still exist? If humans were dangerous, why did she, the last of her kind, not want to destroy anything? If she was a virus, why was her only wish to see a field of flowers? The universe never gave answers. It only cast questions into the wind and waited for no one to catch them. And yet, she wanted to live, no matter how foolish it was, no matter how meaningless everything seemed. She wanted to live. She had been walking for days or weeks or years. Time was irrelevant. The ice did not care for time. The cold did not measure minutes. But then, the sky changed. A massive shadow emerged on the horizon, growing between the grey clouds. Yuna stopped. Her eyes widened. She had never seen anything like it. A colossal ship gliding through the sky like a fallen star. Its shape was unlike anything she knew. Not old scrap, not retro-futuristic technology covered in rust. It was something new. Something alive. The turbines pulsed in shades of purple and blue, like a heart beating slowly. And then she saw it, engraved on the metallic hull glowing against the ice storm, the final ember of the horizon. A name that meant nothing, and yet seemed to carry all the meaning in the world.